We live in a world that seems to only increase in terror attacks. We live in a world where people are scary. We live in a world where we want protection. While protection is vital, we must never be so caught up in our safety that we forget about our rights. Rights that belong to us even when there is a threat to our safety or the safety of our nation. It is because the world we live in ought to respect our rights even when faced with a threat to national security that I stand resolved that when in conflict, the individual right to privacy is more important than national security. Now, whenever we examine mindsets such as these, the mindset that the individual right to privacy is greater than national security, or the reverse mindset, we need to look both at the mindsets and the results they produce. And we examine those mindsets, so we have to have a way to distinguish which mindset is the best mindset. That's why I would like to give you a standard to look at these mindsets by and see which mindset is really the best. And the standard to judge by is simply a question that I want you to ask yourself. And that question is, what am I willing to live by? I want you to ask yourself, what am I willing to live by? With that in mind, let's look at 3 key terms that we'll be using this round, and then we'll jump into the points. The first key term is national security, and that's defined as the protection or safety of a country's secrets or its citizens. Privacy is your freedom to do things without other people watching you or knowing what you are doing. And a right is a just claim or title, whether it's legal, perspective, or moral. With that in mind, let's look at point number 1, and that the right to privacy includes the right to remain silent. Our right to privacy includes our right to remain silent. Now, oftentimes when we think about privacy, we really just tend to think of the physical side, like our own private property or messages that we may write down. However, privacy extends to more than just our physical realm, but instead to our intellectual realm as well. Privacy, as I mentioned earlier, is the freedom to do things without other people watching you or knowing what you are doing. Let us not forget that thinking is doing something. Thus, one aspect of privacy is being able to think without other people knowing what we are thinking. We can see this aspect of privacy in the Fifth Amendment to our Constitution, when it says that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Now, essentially what the Fifth Amendment means by this is that people cannot be forced to confess to a crime that they may have committed. The right to remain silent may sound more familiar to you. Now, the right to remain silent is essentially the right to privacy, the freedom to not tell others what we are thinking. And we can see an application of this come into conflict with national security with the Miranda rights. You can write down my application as the Miranda rights. Now, in 1966, the Supreme Court of the United States reviewed the case Miranda versus Arizona. Now, essentially what happened was this man named Miranda was convicted of a crime for raping and kidnapping and sentenced to 30 years for both accounts. However, he was convicted of the crime due to both an oral and a written confession made. However, when Miranda made these confessions, he did not know that 1, he had the right to attorney, and 2, that he had the right to remain silent. And so the Supreme Court of the United States said, this case does not count, this does not stand, because he was not informed of his right to remain silent. And thus, now police officers have to advise the people in custody of their Miranda rights. This is just an example of how we place the right to individual privacy above national security. Because think about it. If people didn't have the right to remain silent, the police could incarcerate threats to national security far more quickly than they do now. But yet, even in the face to threats of national security, we value the rights of even the accused. My second point is that the right to privacy does not deter national security. Our right to privacy does not deter national security. Now, this is extremely important to remember. In Miranda's case, Miranda was tried again after the Supreme Court overruled the original sentencing, and he was convicted, this time without the unconstitutionally gained confessions. This just shows us that even when we respect the right to privacy above national security, that doesn't mean that we can't get national security in the end. Now, national security is definitely worth pursuing, and thankfully we have 2 ways in our country in which we can pursue national security and still value the right to privacy above national security. And those 2 ways come in the form of warrants and consent. Warrants and consent. So let's first look at warrants. Our Fourth Amendment tells us that, quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized, unquote. So what does this mean concerning our right to privacy? It means that neither we nor our possessions can be searched without a warrant. Warrants in this case are basically legal documents that allow proper authorities to invade our privacy. But what purpose do warrants serve? They don't make police physically capable of invading our privacy. Instead, warrants are used to respect the fact that people have the right to privacy. Warrants are legal documents that allow authorities to invade our privacy in a legal way because we have the legal right to privacy. The use of warrants stems from the mindset that the individual right to privacy is greater than national security. The second way in which we can respect our individual right to privacy and still get national security is essentially through consent. Now, a right, as I stated earlier, is a claim, and a claim to something is a choice to have something or not to have something. Thus, the right to privacy is a choice to say, I want privacy or I do not want privacy. If a police officer knocks on your door and says, can I take a look around? You have two choices. You can say yes or you can say no. Either way, you are exercising your right to privacy. If you say yes, the police officer can indeed invade your privacy, but he will be doing so in a way that respects your right to privacy. And thus, we can still achieve national security if we give our consent for people to invade our privacy. We can achieve national security while still believing that their individual right to privacy is greater. Now the question comes to you. What are you willing to live by? Do you want to live in a world where the right to remain silent is more important than obtaining a confession? Or where the police have to have our consent or warrants before looking through our privacy? If your answer is yes, then you want to live in a world that values the individual right to privacy above national security.
I'm not ready.
Okay, John. Good afternoon. I just have a few questions for you. Now, could you repeat your definition of national security?
Yes, it comes from the Macmillan Dictionary. It is the protection or the safety of a country's secrets and its citizens.
And its citizens. Okay. And then what was your definition of privacy?
Privacy, also from the Macmillan Dictionary, is the freedom to do things without other people watching you or knowing what you are doing.
Okay, so one of your points in your speech was that if we violate someone's privacy by legal measures, then that's okay.
If we do it specifically by using warrants or using consent, then it's okay in that it's not actually invading the right to someone's privacy. It's just invading their privacy.
Okay. Now, would you agree that rights are important because they allow us freedom from restrictions?
In a sense. Also, it could be argued that rights are important simply because they're inherently due to us.
Okay, but the reason we value them is because they let us, to a certain extent, do what we want.
That is a reason why we value them, yes.
Okay. Now, would you agree that we must be alive to actually enjoy our rights?
In most cases, yes. I've never been dead, so I can't actually say what it's like. But I would say, in all likelihood, you would have to be alive to enjoy your rights.
Okay. And from your experience, would you say that a purposeful life includes first having a life and then being able to enjoy your rights?
Yes, having a okay, so essentially the question is, in order to have a purposeful life, you need to have life.
And rights.
And rights?
Yes.
That could be the case.
Well, what would you personally want? Would you, if you have, you're alive, so would you want to have rights or would you rather not have rights?
Well, I would much prefer to have rights than not have rights in my life.
Now, would you also agree that it is in the best interest of a society to be free from oppressive restrictions?
Oppressive restrictions, yes.
Okay. And would you say that terrorists respect the privacy of their victims?
No, I would not.
Okay. Do terrorists respect rights?
But they might respect their rights, but they don't respect other people's rights.
Okay. No further questions.
Prep time?
In 30 seconds, please.